Hey, how's it going, guys? No, your eyes do not deceive you. The modern men are back. Well, for the most part, we're edited, recorded, whatever you want to call it. But I'm Carson. Next to me, oh my God, it's gotten even bigger over time. Andy, how's the beard, man? How is that beard?
That's what she said. It's coming along nicely. We're getting there with a little bit of trim work. We are almost entirely off the screen now. There you go.
And down in the basement, hanging out with all of his favorite X-Men toys, we got Drew Manchu and some of a beard. How's it going,
Look,
Drew?
we've shorn the sheep, okay? I couldn't compete. I had to quit. I had to tap out, submit to the beardosity that is happening above me right there. Man, I missed you guys. It's good to be back.
Happy to be back. I'm going to start making the term by Andy's beard. I'm going to make that catch on somehow, Andy. For the first big episode back for Modern Men, even though by the time this comes out, you guys will all forget about the movie anyway. So we figured because Venom 2 is in theaters as of this recording, let's go back and see what the first appearance of Venom was like. So I proposed to the Modern Men, how about we make a comeback and read the David Michelini, Todd McFarlane Spider-Man run, starting with issue 298. Let's say I just proposed around 302 because it's about 5 or 6 issues worth of content. Probably didn't need to read that much.
No,
So,
I would say not.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and get right into this. So, Amazing Spider-Man 1987. You have a hot new artist named Todd McFarlane, and you drop him on one of the hottest properties in existence. Andy, issue 298, 299. You had a big chance to get into this book. What'd you think, man?
Crap. This is certainly a time capsule from the late 80s by all means. It really definitely is. You can take 298 and 299 and pretty much throw them right out. Let's be honest. Chance definitely wasn't worth the chance. that little chunk of story just didn't feel like it needed to fit, needed to be there. And it wasn't until 300 where I really got into the read.
What about you, Drew? I know you just had a reaction just now to Andy's comment. What did you think of Chance?
See, now I kind of had the
299?
Yeah, man, the opposite reaction to Andy there. We read 298 through 302. I think Silver Sable and 301 and 302 can just scatter on out of here. 300 does definitely stand on its own as a read. The stuff with Chance takes a back seat in those issues to the stuff with Peter and MJ and the relationship between Mary Jane and Peter as newlyweds. And I think it really sets up where they are as people, as characters, when you get into the drama of 300. They add more weight to 300, and afterwards we could have just stopped at the end of 300. I think it was nice to see the evolution of Todd's art through the run. But as far as the story goes, the setup was definitely better than the extra meat on the ends.
Andy, you did have one word that triggered me earlier, and that's time capsule. So this is from issue 299. So there are several things going on here that I want to talk about. They're dressed for a night on the town. Oh, Peter and MJ. Like Peter's coat. He would never get through TSA wearing that coat. You go, what you got under there, pal? And then the second is this supposed to be Paul Schaefer from David Letterman's band? Well, someone tell me that. They call this guy Paul. He's balding. He's short. He's a funny guy. I think this is Paul Schaefer.
That was one of the hard parts of this, is getting over the stylization or the stylings of hair and dress and everything. It really is a time capsule. There's a handful of panels and handful of things that you look back and you read and you're like, oh, what?
You say time capsule. I see this as kind of the birth of this show. This is the birth of the modern era of comics. I think when you see those image artists who were pushing all the boundaries at the time at Marvel, we're getting a lot of dynamic action. We're getting a lot of unusual panel layouts for the time. They definitely were art first creators, and it's cool to see Todd's burgeoning talent throughout this book. I think that it does leave a lot to be desired, and you can see that this was definitely the beginning of his career. He's definitely not a fan of backgrounds. There's a lot of very plain backgrounds going on in this book, and some of the faces are all over the place. But I think with the first 2 issues that were inked by Bob McLeod, you get a lot more form out of what Todd was expressing, and I like those art-wise a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to mention the art up next. I feel like in those first issue and a half, he was kind of just doing like your classic Marvel method. Like there wasn't anything that had like, this is 100% for sure Todd McFarlane's art. Like if you picked up an issue of Spawn or what have you, you know, as soon as you turn that first page on that first round, that's Todd McFarlane's artwork. There's no doubt, no question. In this, you're like, it kind of does look a little just average to me. It's not bad, just average. But as we kind of get on in these issues, you start to see his individual talents come through. And I think that his biggest contribution for sure is the spaghetti webs. You definitely see as soon as that first big splash panel of Spider-Man comes up, you see Todd McFarlane's webs spilling out on through the page because he was the first guy to really draw the webbing like that exactly. So when you first see Peter swinging through in that black costume, like, oh, this is a Todd McFarlane comic. And we haven't gotten that far yet in the story, but I really did appreciate the choice of them taking away the black costume. I know there's a lot of black costume fans out there, but I feel like Todd McFarlane's art definitely benefited when they put him in the red-blue costume. It just made those colors pop off the page a lot better with him drawing it. What about you, Andy? What did you think of Todd's artwork here?
Well, I like what Drew said about the progression of the artwork from the beginning and into 300 and beyond. And I kind of like where I feel like he's drawing comparisons to Kraven's Last Hunt a little bit in 300, like the preparation for the hunt, so to speak. And because Brock calls it the kill, right? I kind of like seeing some inspiration from other Spider-Man reads here. And let's be honest, Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man art is kind of what a lot of people go to and what a lot of people love. So it seems very comforting and very kind of familiar in the Spider-Man universe.
Absolutely. And Drew, I think you made a great point earlier. This is pretty much like the beginnings of what would become the modern era of comics going into the 90s. Because I kind of even forgot until I got done reading this, like, wow, this was 1987 when this thing came out. And you definitely, by the time you get done reading it, you don't feel like you read a Copper Age comic. You feel like you read a modern age 90s comic.
Yeah, I feel like story-wise, Michelini is definitely doing something that's very modern with the story. He's telling the story of MJ's trauma from being, approached by Venom in the first place, her terror at the sight of the black costume, and kind of this is the end of that era, and brought Spider-Man back with kind of a rebirth. There was a definite shift in the story when Todd came on the art, and they wanted to have a fresh start at 300. So I think they really did a really good job with this. The characterizations are all realistic for the most part. I didn't feel like I was reading something that was super corny. I mean, the styles are definitely dated a little bit, and the celebrities are a little dated, but for the most part, this felt pretty evergreen to me.
Yeah, and another favorite, you said they were modernizing the story based on Todd, but another modernizing fact that I kind of like about the story and just seeing Peter have to live with this is MJ's the one bringing home the bacon at the end of the day in their marriage. She's got the modeling gig. She's getting a Manhattan apartment for him. She's moving Peter out of that dump. So just the main story, obviously you have the whole thing going on with this villain Chance, which that was what it was. But I think the real story that I enjoyed in these first 2 issues for me was seeing Peter have to be humble about all this. MJ really being the one in the relationship to be the provider. And then he's just at the day of the bugle, like, hey, Robbie Robertson, you got any of them jobs? I did enjoy seeing that relationship between those two.
They got to have a housekeeper now because she can't have dish games.
Right. Yeah, he can't even come through the window anymore. He has to go through the front door so not to upset the housekeeper that Peter could be doing this stuff to. But no, it's too bougie or something like that. But Andy, actually, I did want to ask you specifically a question. I don't know how you read this. If you read I read mine on Marvel Unlimited, even though I own the omnibus and just took the plastic off of it to flip through it for this. But there were a lot of Q's and Jim Shooter editor notes of like, where, for instance, when Peter does get his costume back, he has like a cheap Halloween costume for the end of 300, but then you come back in 301, he's like, yeah, boy, it's great. I'm wearing the real thing now. And it says like, see, Spectacular Spider-Man 117 for this JS. So Andy, I know you love the moderns. Seeing these like pre-modern to early modern works, do you like the editor's notes? Does that do anything for you? Does it detract you at all?
I do. My primary concern is making time to dive into those other things to see what they're getting at or what they're talking about. Because more often than not, like even tonight, I started reading and got halfway through with this yesterday, and then got crunched for time to finish this read today. So having the editor's notes is nice, but it's one of those things where it's like I'd rather have the physical copies sitting here on the shelf ready to go, so that when I had that rainy day where I can tune out the rest of the world, then I can start bouncing into that short box and pulling those other books and start kind of expanding from that. But in the modern life way of things now, if you will, I read digitally often, and it's to keep up with timetables and to keep up with everything that's going on. So to see those editor's notes in digital, I'm glad they're there as reminders, but it's not something I'm going to flaunt right over to or hop right over to on digitally and pick right up, because generally digitally that means buying another omnibus or a hardcover. It means buying another $8 to $20 book, and I know they're sitting around here somewhere already, so why buy them again, right?
Well, what about you, Drew? You're a more experienced reader throughout the years. What do you do you miss editor's notes at all like this?
By Andy's beard, editor's notes give me the biggest nerd boner ever. When I see editor's notes, you know what that means to me? It means living world. It means growing actual continuity. It means shared universe. And Jesus, if you could watch the Marvel movies with editor's notes and the subtitles, I mean, come on. Like everybody watches YouTube videos now to figure out what these editor's notes are between these movies and these TV shows. Editor's notes show me that the editor cares about what's going on in the books, cares about building a fully realized universe. I love that so much, and it pains me that it's something we don't see a lot anymore. Man, I absolutely love the fact that they're like, yeah, no, this is what happened, and here's where you find it. It makes you feel like you're a part of a much bigger world.
So I bet you got half a boner when they told you to go read X Factor 25 to see why there was a blackout in New York City in the middle of Spider-Man.
I already read X Factor 25.
One more question before we get into 300, and it has to do, Andy, I think you're going to love this one, because we're going to talk about what is and is not a first appearance and a cameo appearance.
Oh, God.
So
Shit.
if you read the end of 299, we're going to maybe have a little bit of a hot topic here. So the end of 299 is this panel right here.
Yeah.
So this is how it ends, 299. And as most people watching this probably know, if you go buy a copy of Amazing Spider-Man 300 and even get it CGC graded, the entire world's going to tell you that the first appearance of Venom is in that book. Well, this is the end of 299. I see his torso. I see his face. I even see his legs, his arms.
Yep. And he talks.
Andy talks. He has a line. How is this not a first appearance, Andy?
Correct. By definition, from the larger chunk of the community, they define it as in full view and lines, dialogue. Everything is here to make this a first appearance. Yet the people, like everybody that says that, they don't all agree that 299 is the first appearance. It's 300. 300 is the first appearance. 299 is a cameo. I don't know why that is. This is the same Hulk 180, 181 situation. That it's the same thing with ASM 134 and 135 with the second appearance of Punisher. The community and at large has put out guidelines to a degree. Cameo in its definition, this is well beyond that, right?
Yeah, it's even got his name at the bottom.
This meets the definition of first appearance, but yet it's not.
This is the iconic cover, obviously. This is the cover that you see this cover. You think Todd McFarlane, you think Spider-Man and Venom. You want this comic book. So I think that's mainly the reason why. When you think first Venom, this is the cover that comes to mind to most people because it's just such an iconic cover.
But
What
that
about
page
you?
you just showed is the first thing that comes to my mind for me in the first appearance of Venom is the last page
Correct.
of 299.
What about you, Drew? What do you say about all this?
In the immortal words of Conan, yo, 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 let me speak on this. The problem with considering 299 a cameo and not the first appearance is that the cameo is in 298.
It is.
There's a cameo in 298. 299 is the first appearance, dropping the hammer on it. Full page. He gets his own splash. He gets a line while being shown. The only problem is there's no debut of the tongue. Did we see the tongue at all in any of this run? And
No.
when you think of Venom, you think of the tongue. It's become synonymous. And first Venom, the whole arc, no tongue, man.
I only
That's
think
the
you
deal.
see him again to like what, issue 315, if I remember right.
Who cares? Cameo first appearance. When's the tongue come out? The next collectible item in the Venom line should definitely be first appearance of the iconic tongue.
It's just kind of like Deadpool. Like, is there any heat on when Deadpool became funny? Wasn't like a Deadpool Zero in a Wizard magazine is what some people consider like the true version of Deadpool now. Like, I guess
the beginning
that,
of the
what
Joe
was
Kelly run.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, what's the true version of Venom? Because here, I mean, obviously, you get a great backstory. So, you get the whole backstory, no problem. But when do you get, like, Eddie Brock talking to this completely separate entity and he's got the tongue everywhere and he's got, like, he's shooting black symbiote stuff at people instead of just webbing? So, like, I guess when does it get to that point? I'm glad I got this whole book to find out now.
And when do you get to the Brian Michael Bendis? You know, it's a symbiote planet, which runs into the Donny Cates. Well, it's not just a symbiote planet; it's a god of symbiotes and the symbiote dragon. And then there's guys who have symbiotes in Vietnam. And like, what the hell is even going on with Venom these days? But what an evolution from this first appearance.
So yeah, 300 starts off with MJ. She's scared in the closet from 299, where we got the first full appearance of Venom, in my opinion, and everybody else's opinion. So that's why she's scared. Peter comes home, and obviously Venom was there. And yeah, like you kind of find out like a lot of the backstory just have in your head about Venom is already in this issue. It's the origin of Venom. Venom can bypass all of the spider sense stuff that Peter has going on. Eddie Brock as Venom doesn't like Peter because of the whole Sin Eater storyline, which Jim Shooter does a great job telling you in editor's notes. There was confusion on who the real Sin Eater was. Eddie Brock published a bunch of articles that incorrectly stated who Sin Eater was because he was lied to. Peter Parker is the one, probably as Spider-Man, of course, broke the news on who actually was Sin Eater, ruining Eddie Brock's career to the point where he just focused all of his energies on hitting the gym and moping. And he finally just was going to end it all, but he went to church instead. And that's when Peter got hit with the bells and destroyed the costume that went down to Eddie Brock. And here we are. Andy, what are your thoughts on the origin of Venom?
It's iconic. Like I said many times over, I'm a bigger fan of the tertiary characters than I am of Spider-Man himself, and I did a disservice by not getting into the Venom stuff in the 90s, the late 80s, 90s, when I should have and held on to that stuff, because Venom is the forefront, the premier symbiote. So I definitely shouldn't have slept on that, and I kind of missed that fact. So it was nice to revisit this. It really was.
What about you, Drew? I know you're a big fan of that cartoon growing up. What do you think of the origin of Venom here?
I love this story, and you know, it gnaws at me that knowing this origin of Venom makes it so I can't enjoy the Venom film, because I want to just go to the movies and turn my brain off and, you know, enjoy something. And because I'm such a nerd for continuity, I can't freaking do it. I can't wrap my head around how to just have fun with Venom that just ignores Spider-Man and this whole origin. This is the origin that I was taught as a child growing up. It is gospel to me. Knew this story like the back of my hand before I ever read this book. Reading trading cards and talking to kids at the comic store that were reading Spider-Man when I was reading X-Men. I love this origin story. I think that there's a lot about this book that I don't like, but the story itself is fantastic and stands the test of time.
But yeah, there was one comic trope toward the end of this issue, though, after, Venom does win over Peter. So the classic comic trope, ever since the 66 Batman, I'm sure even before that, you defeat the hero, and instead of just killing the hero while he's down, you tape him to a giant bell, and yeah, I can't listen to this bell, so I'm just going to walk off while you solve your own problem here. What did you guys say? Did you see comic trope right on the page here? Andy, did you like this part?
I did. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Nice.
He also had that Bond villain soliloquy.
Yep.
While he had him webbed to the.
Basically, the way he tells his origin story is just one giant trope. Peter's just trying to keep him talking while he figures out a solution in his head and gets away. He wants him to tell him his origin so he can run away.
It's a very cheesy trope, but and something that was kind of a sign of the times when this book was written. But I think that there's enough freshness added to it that it does read like a modern book.
Peter, after a while, summarizes well, if he didn't make this webbing, he's got to be creating it somehow. So he pretty much summarizes that, the symbiote created the webbing. So if he wasted this much webbing, he doesn't have that much symbiote left. So that's how he ultimately defeats Venom here, is he makes him create so much webbing, he just kind of turns back into Eddie Brock and falls down more or less. So at the end, he's like, oh yeah, Reed Richards helped me contain this the first time. So he takes him to whatever the Fantastic Four building was called in 1987. And the Thing is the leader of the Fantastic Four. He kind of looks like a Klingon here. The last thing that was in 300, he gets the costume back. So Mary Jane is like, I am upset because Venom wore black and you're wearing the black costume, and I don't like that. I got a better idea. Throws a Halloween costume, and we get the awesome, bright and colorful Spider-Man back. He's got the webbed up armpits and all. So that's how this issue ends. So that takes us to 301 and 302. And Drew, I know you're a big Silver Sable fan. Why don't you tell us what you thought of Silver Sable in these next couple issues?
Man, does she look good. Man, does Silver Sable look good. Beyond that, it's just kind of a really boring, military contractor mission story where Spider-Man ends up doing all the work and getting none of the glory. And I could take or leave it.
That other issue, 302, basically he gets his dream job is presented to him, but it's in Nebraska or something like that. I can't even remember. I should have wrote it down. He basically discovers a guy who got his powers the exact same way, except he didn't have spider powers. He got bit by a jackrabbit.
Yeah. So, does anybody know who this bunny man is?
I was hoping he just turned into the Nesquik bunny, but that didn't happen. See, we're going to be laughing about this in a couple months when Julia Louis-Dreyfus' character in the MCU finds this rabbit man and it's a post credit in one of the internals.
I got to look now.
If I could go back in time, I probably would just told the guys, we're reading issue 300, maybe just a couple parts of 298, 299, because 301, 302, decent one-shot single issues, but they were just that decent. If you want to see good Todd McFarlane art, go read them, but you're not missing much from a story standpoint, in my opinion.
And I think art-wise, Todd really stepped it up in those issues. I think the action with Silver Sable is really well depicted. I think that his control over faces and emotions becomes a little bit more consistent than it was in 300 itself. And it's some good stuff, but it's just not really connected to this read as a whole.
Todd did a better job the longer this thing goes. You start to see his independence he gets drawing Spider-Man. Spider-Man just looks better popping off the page in each issue with the more detailed webbing. His poses, obviously, he's famous for. Andy, what information you got on Rabbit Boy or whatever this guy's name was?
Zero.
Oh,
nothing that I can find.
His first and last appearance. That's the read. So how do we score this one, guys? That's what I've been trying to rack my brain. Andy, I'm just going to pitch it to you. Give this a score.
This is tough. I don't feel like this held up as much as I hoped it would. I feel like I was a much, much different person when I read this in 87 or 88, or even in 89, maybe a year later. And I feel like as a grown adult now, knowing Peter's every thought bubble that comes out just almost seems a little bit burdensome. There's almost too much going on, and there's not a lot left for the imagination. At the end of the day, I really think this is a 9.2 for me. I really enjoyed, like Drew was talking about, the progression of Todd's art, right? And really how that kind of develops. But story-wise, when you factor in all the other stuff that makes a comic book, I kind of feel like it's a 9.2 for me.
I might have been a little harsh on this when I was thinking about it earlier. There's a lot that I really love about this read. I'm going to go with a 9.6. Overall, this is the debut of a fantastic character that has stood the test of time, is super popular. People love. It's kind of the beginning of an era in comics and an end of an era at the same time. I love that cultural bridge there where you get the end of the black costume, you're going back to the red and blue, you're getting, the beautiful Todd McFarlane art, which is kind of, all over the place, but you can see the genius there in every page. Even when he's got some faces that look a little wonky, you get a fantastic layout on the next page. The splashes are beautiful. The spaghetti webs just they've been done that way pretty much ever since. That's, he changed the character inherently, and that's just beautiful. The contortionist poses, I'd say a 9.6. This is just you get MJ and Peter as newlyweds. I think that what I took away from it reading it now, as opposed to when I read it when I was younger, is something that maybe Andy didn't like. I think when I saw Peter's inner thoughts, I kind of got more of a understanding of who he was as a person, and it really drove the story for me, knowing what he was concerned about in his relationship, whether it be finances or his wife being terrorized by a giant monster. He had motivations for everything he was doing. I think Michelini did a really good job in this era of, like you said, keeping stories succinct and self-contained, but also building on the continuity at issue after issue. And really, what more could you ask out of a comic book? This is memorable. It's a 300 issue. It's a milestone. Debut of a fantastic character. I think 9.6 is really as low as I'm going to go on this.
For me, I'm going to go, I'll say 8.0, but I'm going to give issue 300 a 9.6. If that makes sense. So I don't want to say I'm giving this a low score, but I'm saying the other books around 300 were average. Would I say they're must read? For McFarlane fans, yes. For everybody else, not so much. Obviously, 300 is a different ballgame, though. I think everybody who's a Marvel fan, especially if you halfway enjoyed the Venom movie and want to know more about that character, you have to read 300. So that's definitely a must read issue for sure. So yeah, those are my scores. I hate giving two scores, but I feel like I don't have a choice here.
It makes sense. Like that's kind of where my head was at when you tally everything up and your highs and your lows and kind of balance it out.
I'm only counting the first 3 issues we read.
I
like 298 and 299. I thought that they added a lot to 300's enjoyment for me.
We've seen a ton done with the Spider-Man character and property, with cartoons, obviously the movies and such, animated movies. Into the Spider-Verse 2 is going to be a thing. With Venom, there was a second Venom movie, which part of the influence of why we did this review today. So my question to you guys, and of course I'll start with you, Andy, what do you want to see next come out of the Spider-Man universe of the comics into, say, well, anything, any media, like movies, TV? Like, what do you want to see next from Spider-Man?
I really don't know where to begin because there's so much to draw from and so much stuff that they haven't gone into, and I feel there's so many aspects of the Spider-Verse that they haven't been true to as well. I'm sure Drew can go into a lot of detail, but like the second Venom movie, I think like Drew had mentioned going into a theater, shutting off and being entertained, but he can't because he has such an interest into the backstory and the history and the development, the editor's notes and everything. And I'm at the point where I do want to be entertained, but for the love of God, just kind of do it well. Stop pandering to every human on the planet and pander to the fans that are willing to go see the movie 10 times over, because they're still not doing it right with Venom, in my opinion. Like, I'm just going to focus on that for a moment. But what do I want to see next? I don't know. I don't even know where to begin. I really don't know where to begin, where they're going to go, because I don't feel like they've actually hit their stride I just feel like they're still searching and grasping for straws.
What about you, Drew? Where do they go next with Spider-Man?
Where they go next with Spider-Man is into the multiverses, which we're going to see with the next film, and I think that that's going to really set up what we get going forward from uh, at least the Disney arm of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They're doing a lot of stuff with Sony. I think that I didn't see Venom 2, but I hear that there's a post-credit sequence that, spoiler alert, ties him to Spider-Man finally. Too little too late as far as I'm concerned with that corner of things, but uh, let's see where it goes. Word is that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are in this new movie, even though they both say that they're not. Are we going to get multiple Spider-Men? Are we going to get a live-action Spider-Verse? I thought that Into the Spider-Verse was a fantastic film with a very unique production style of animation that really drove the whole thing home. But I loved Dan Slott's Spider-Verse. I thought that all the spider people coming together and like kind of a Crisis on Infinite Spiders was a really cool story, a really great execution on some really bad ideas about spider totems and Roar Lund, the vampire spider guy. Who the hell even knows what's going on there? But I think that all these spider characters came together in a way that was really enjoyable. A lot of people hate the MCU Spider-Man, call him Iron Man Jr. I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and I think that he's got a really great sensibility as both Spidey and Peter Parker, something that I thought that the previous Spider-Man missed out on one aspect or the other. And I really like what they're doing with it, and I can't wait to see more of it, even though that does really fly away from the set continuity of The Amazing Spider-Man as told by Marvel Comics. I think that it's a really good twist, and they put some love and care into it and made sure they got the character beats right, and that's what's really important. But man, could I see a Spider-Verse cartoon on Disney Plus in the style of What If, where there's just like, hey, it's a Spider-Man show where we take looks at different Spider universes? I think that'd be awesome. I think that is a no-brainer production-wise. I think they got to figure out who owns what and how they got to get those rights together. But we're living in a day and age where entertainment is throwing more and more and more at us, more than most people can handle. So I'm just going to sit back and see how it hits. Spider-Man is something that will always catch my attention.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I would love to see more integration of the Into the Spider-Verse stuff, because I mean that arguably that might be the best Spider-Man movie that they've done. Most people usually point to Spider-Man 2, but they definitely up the ante Into the Spider-Verse, and hopefully now that they've opened up the floodgates to the multiverse, they kind of don't forget what's going on over there, which I don't think they will. I would kind of mark out in the theater if they paid Jake Johnson to show up as a live version of his character in Into the Spider-Verse, just some fat, out of shape Peter Parker and a dirty trench coat eating a slice of pizza for 1 second. I think that would be hilarious. So I'd definitely like to see that. I think they're eventually going to throw Silk in there. If not in probably the next animated movie, we'll get more Spider-Gwen. Miles is like, his days are numbered before he's going to get a live action movie. I think that's a must for sure. But I guess in terms of just the character Peter Parker, I finally kind of want to see Peter make this leap into being a fully grown adult, because I feel like we've gotten all these incarnations now of Spider-Man. He kind of just keeps getting younger and more sarcastic. We've never really got a chance to see him in that lab coat being like a teaching assistant, or have Parker Industries, for instance, like in the Dan Slott run. Like I'm kind of ready for Peter Parker to grow up a little bit, if you guys know what I'm talking about. Like, I feel like even the Tobey Maguire one, we got to see at least him in college. But beyond that, the series got canceled because the third one was so bad. And I barely remember the Amazing one, I'll be honest. The second one is a mess. So
I can't hate on Spider-Man 3, man. When I watch Spider-Man 3, I at least get that Spider-Man 3 or Amazing Spider-Man 300 story of Venom, which that makes more sense to me than anything in the Tom Hardy movie, to be honest.
Sure.
But that's just my nerddom working right there. As far as seeing Peter grow up. That's why you have Miles, I think, because you need the character to move on, but at the same time, Spider-Man needs to be about putting responsibility first as a young man. That's really what the original run was about. And I think that seeing him grow in his relationships is really necessary. But there's a reason why they keep going back to the well. They keep rebooting Spider-Man and making him younger, taking his wife and family away via reconstituted continuities, because a young Peter Parker is where you get the spirit of that original story. So I don't think we're going to ever lose Spider-Man in high school, so to speak, but to see Peter Parker move on into something different would be fun to see on the big screen.
Yeah, I mean, his origin is as iconic, in my opinion, as Superman coming out of Krypton in that ship, or the Waynes and the Pearls.
The pearls
at
dropping.
this point. The pearls dropping for the umpteenth time. So it's up there, but at the same time, like, I've seen that on screen multitudes of times now. I'm kind of ready to move on from that. We have excellent versions of this origin that are probably, well, I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch the Tobey Maguire one to see how timeless it is before I call it timeless. It may be, maybe it's not at this point. I haven't watched it for a while, but I'm ready for the character to move forward, I guess, instead of be replaced or retold again.
I think it was my favorite part of the MCU Spider-Man was the fact that they didn't dwell on the origin. You know, he basically just told Tony Stark, he's like, look, I realized that I had a responsibility, you know, and it doesn't matter how he comes to that realization. That is who Spider-Man is if you can do something, you have a responsibility to do it.
And I definitely enjoyed the way they handled the character coming in, because they didn't know how long they're going to have the character. They didn't know it was going to be this long term. I think that was just the 4-movie shot is all it was. So they had to get their stuff in real quick, especially since the first introduction was in the middle of the Civil War movie, which already had so much going on in it. So I definitely respect the fact that they made the choices they did so far. But yeah, Tom Hardy, I could have did without. Like, I would have rather, like, I guess, you know, I'll pitch it back to Andy here in a second, but are you guys, I don't think you guys are going to be thrilled to see Tom Hardy. Would you rather just seen a replacement Venom or not Venom at all?
Yeah, not Venom at all. I'm very firm on the fact that I think that Sony should not make Spider-Man movies at all. Give it to the MCU. Let them do their thing, because they know what they're doing with these properties. And a lot of people will say, oh, yeah, well, MCU movies get stale. They're formulaic. Yeah, that's fine, but they have a respect and a love for these characters that you don't see in Sony's productions. Venom has become a cartoon when he could be something menacing as a villain first, you know, and they want to make movies about Carnage. That's fine. I haven't seen it yet. Might be great. I haven't heard great things about it. They want to make Silver and Black, a movie about Silver Sable and Black Cat, again, without Spider-Man in it. Count me out. These are things that they wanted to make a spy thriller. That was on Sony's slate at one point. An Aunt May spy thriller.
Well, it'd be Marissa Tomei in a movie.
Well, it wouldn't be Marissa Tomei, because it was before Marissa Tomei was cast as Aunt May. It would have been an old lady Aunt May and her younger days as a spy.
I bet you would have had that dog from The Amazing Friends. That would have made it kind of entertaining. But
hey, throw in Firestar and I'm in, but you got to have Spider-Man in there if it's a Spider-Man property. And that's my main issue with Venom. The character itself is so tied to Spider-Man. Like, that's his thing, is he looks like Spider-Man.
Yeah, I think they're just moving Venom over. My theory is they're wanting to get Tom Holland in that black costume in time for whatever Secret Wars thing they're going to do. So I think it's going to be like the reverse of the origin now. So he's somehow going to get some symbiote from Venom. So he's going to have the black costume going forward, going into Secret Wars. Andy, what's your opinion on this? Venom or no Venom going forward in MCU?
I'm with Drew. I really am with Drew, because continuing the way they are just doesn't seem fruitful. It doesn't seem right. it's I'm honestly kind of like worn out, tired thinking about how they cross their T's and dot their I's and how they're going to make this right, because it seems like a lot of effort and a lot of work put into two very average movies, and to not have Spider-Man in either of them. And I have not seen the second movie yet, but I'm not even going to go on a limb. I'm just going to say it's did well at the theater for probably some different reasons. I think it's just going to end up being an average movie. You look at some of the underlying factors or things that usually happen when a movie drops with a major first appearance of a character, and it's crickets on the secondary market when it comes to comic books in general. In fact, it's downward trends. And even some of the tertiary characters from that movie that have first appearances in other books, it's just downward trends or crickets. So I feel like the movie may have been enjoyable for a large chunk of people out there, but I feel like for diehard fans and collectors, it's just not hitting the marks. So I think I'm with Drew. Is that it needs to be done right. It needs to be done like through like MCU style. They make all this money and spend all this time, and then they're just not. It's just not happening.
I feel like
being done well.
I feel like there's two schools of thought on this, and that's like if you have a giant Carnage tattoo on your back right now, you either freaking love this movie or you freaking hate this movie. Like one or the other. Like you're either so blind to the fact that it's a betrayal of the comic property that you're actually getting a Carnage movie that you're just like, yay. Or you don't care that you're getting a Carnage movie because it flies in the face of what you've read for the past 30 years. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why me as like an X-Men fan, I hope that they don't fold them in via multiverse. I hope that they go scorched earth Star Wars Legends style and do their own new thing. Pay attention to the details the same way they did to the Avengers. We can't always get what we want. And, some of these things a little bastardized, but when you see we got this covered articles about Kevin Feige being interested in Nicolas Cage for Ghost Rider, it's like, no, don't do that. Just don't do that. Like, there are things you should do, sure, but don't do that.
I mean, that's why I'm wondering if J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah was like the ultimate test of like, can we recast these actors people really love and them not having a problem with it being essentially a new character?
He's the best J. Jonah Jameson we could possibly get. J.K. Simmons is phenomenal. Cave Johnson, give me Cave Johnson any day.
That is the best comic book movie casting we'll probably ever see. By far the best, in my opinion. They could do whatever they want. Just wait till we get Jared Leto as Morbius. That'll be a fun one, right?
Are they ever going to release that movie? That thing's been done since before Black Widow.
I think you can go see it for Valentine's Day if you want, Drew. I think it was Valentine's Day was the release date on that thing.
Oh, Jesus.
Wow.
I got a really good off-color joke of things that suck on Valentine's Day.
There you go.
We're going to edit that one out. Keeping it PG, folks.
So I think that's about all we have for our big return episode of Modern Men. Andy, where can people find you?
You guys can find me here on Modern Men when we're dropping great content about modern reads. You guys can find me on my own channel at Comic Man Andy. You guys can also find me on the Whatnot app, slinging some books from time to time.
What about you, Drew? Where can people find Drew Manchu?
The only place on is TikTok, so search for Drew Manchu on TikTok, and you can see me out and about on the town, or sharing my comic books, or just doing random stuff.
And then you can find me youtube.com/cwoodard19, as well as Instagram, Twitter, cwoodard19. I've been reviewing all of the Harry Potter movies. I've never seen them before, so I'm almost done. As of this recording, I have the Deathly Hallows left. Those may hit before or after this is uploaded here. And I'm still dropping comic book reviews, and I should have a CGC unboxing coming up soon. I got 2 books coming back from CGC. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Well, we'll see what happens first. Will I get books from CGC, or will the Modern Men episode get dropped? What's going to happen first? I'm not sure, but nonetheless, I still have thousands of books, I feel like, at CGC at this point. I'm not getting them back anytime soon, but look for that on my channel. Big thank you guys so much for watching this. We'll catch you next time.